not only to New York Institute of Technology, which out in Westbury, we used to have there you are, Jane, we used to have a West Islip campus, I think, or an Islip campus out some years ago. And then we also had one in the city, but I began reading about this year and whatnot, and I knew it was. Some of you look like you're like me, maybe you were around for the 200th.
Some of us.
Okay, some of us. I was in the 200th, I went to different reenactments. It was wonderful. Went up to the Boston area to what is Bunker Hill, Breeds Hill. They had a wonderful memorial up there. Also went to the Battle of Long Island, which is in Brooklyn. And those of us that were part of that, we were able to walk behind all of the militia and the guns firing and everything. It was just wonderful. No, that was 225. And the 200th, sorry, we went with our family. My dad was in World War II as an officer and whatnot. So he was able to join Fort Hamilton. Are you all familiar with Fort Hamilton? It's underneath the Verrazano. So we had a wonderful day. All the ships that came in, I don't know if any of you got a chance to see the ships this time. I just saw them online, but it's just the most magnificent day sitting out on the grass, all the tall ships going by. And on the 225th, I went to those reenactments. And this year, so I've been waiting for this for about 7 years. And so when I think about this 250, it's not just one day, July 4th. It's an entire year. And then even before and the after out of this. So for me, it's, the 9 talks, it's teaching, making sure people know about what's going on, wearing stuff. I went around, matter of fact, my sister and I were in a Stop and Shop out near us. And this father was carrying a young child, all kinds of red, white, and blue stuff on, and so did the father and whatnot. And I said, hey, happy 250th. And the man had a British accent, so I said, hey, that's great. And he said, yeah, we're doing it, we're here. So, it's just a really good time for the 250th. So happy birthday to all of us with that. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to show you Long Island. Now this is what we might think of as the original part of Long Island. The reason I want you to know this, and you folks, is there anyone who's not from this area of Long Island? Where are you folks from?
Virginia.
Virginia, I love it. Have you been out to the other area closer to New York City or anything? How did you come?
We made our way from Baltimore from Sail 250 with the ships.
Oh, you did?
And then we came up the coast.
Oh, you'll have to tell me about that. It
was awesome.
Wonderful. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted you to see this because, for one thing, when I give a lecture talk in either Queens or Nassau County, I have to remind folks that this area is part of Long Island, because they're used to 5 boroughs of Long Island, 5 areas, counties of, not counties, but 5 areas of New York City. And Brooklyn and Queens are part of that. So when they think about Long Island, they think from Nassau County out. But this is the entirety of what Nassau County, or what Long Island is. And I wanted you to see this because today we have 10 bridges. We have 3 major airports. We have a couple of smaller ones. We have ferries all around. I just talked to people today or yesterday that took the ferry out to Orient Point. So a lot of times people today don't think about this being an island, but we are. And any place you go on Long Island, you're going to hit water, right? In their period of history, you got off Long Island really just 2 ways, either by ship or you swam, right? A ship or boat. And I will mention that to you because in this area here, and I love being so close to the map, that in this area here, which is the East River and pretty dangerous as far as the water and whatnot. Did you come up? You came up by boat? Where did you folks dock?
We came through the East River to Port Washington.
Oh, you did? That's where we're from. Okay. Anyway, so when you get a chance to see, this can be a little treacherous in here, but I want to talk to you about George Washington getting his men off of Long Island too, for this as well. So in this area, in this period of history, this is a very different kind of life for these people. I know that it's some of these areas out here a little more isolated and whatnot, but in their period it really was. And if you think about it for the native populations, there were 3 major paths for them, which would have been 25A. You're all familiar with 25A, right? Which is Northern Boulevard, it's Main Street, it's a lot of different areas, goes all the way into Queens. And then there is on the South Shore, Montauk Highway, I believe it is, around 27.
Sunrise Highway.
Sunrise Highway, okay, and then also another major road in the middle. So this was a very different lifestyle. And in the book that I wrote after this American Revolution on Long Island is George Washington's 1790 tour of the Grand Tour of Long Island. He will come out here again, and a lot of the comments that he makes about what Long Island looked like versus, I suppose, what he was from, and obviously Virginia. You folks have been to his home? No? Yeah, just incredible. Okay. And this is the book. I did not bring any to sign. I said if anybody has any, I'm willing to sign them for you. This was a very famous painting that we put on, and this is the old house. You'll see a more recreated picture of this. It was renovated but the Battle of Long Island that took place here, and I took a picture of all this kind of smoke here because of the muskets and things that these folks used at that time that really just covered over a lot of the picture that was going on, and whether these folks, whether the British and the Americans could see one another as well. And you can see that with this Battle of Long Island, the Battle of Long Island was the largest battle of the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War was 1775 to 1783. And one of the things I know we use this July 4th as 250th because of the Declaration of Independence, which is easiest for folks to remember. But the war started over a year prior to that July 4th signing. It started in April of 1775. So we lost this, and this battle was in August of 1776. We're coming up on that. There will be a recreation again of that. There are patriots all born and buried rather all over Long Island, and there's some that I want to talk to you about that are from that area as well. So we were occupied, the British and then the Hessians occupied Long Island for the entirety, the last 7 years of the war. Very difficult for these folks. One of the reasons I like to give these lectures is not just to talk about this, but so people realize the history that went on in Long Island and how much these people suffered during that period. And particularly a lot of the women, because the militias, the males were in the militias, or they might have gone into the Continental Army after that. A lot of the women kept the home fires burning, and some of the things that happened to them and what they had to do to fend off the British themselves and whatnot as well. Now, this is the contents, and again, just so you have an overview of what was written about this war. The struggle for independence on Long Island, you'll see different areas. In Huntington, they did a Declaration of Rights. It was also their own independence document. Loyalist sympathies, if any of you are not familiar with that word loyalists, those are the people, males, females, whatever, that were loyal to the crown at that point. They did not want, and obviously there was, the build-up to the Declaration of Independence. So by the time they got there, they did, but there were also these loyalists, and a lot of them were in Kings County and the battle for Brooklyn, because there, and if we went back to that fish, the head of the fish is where the Queens and then Brooklyn, that Kings County was a lot of the people that were more wealthy. And when I was passing through here, I know you folks appreciate it, there was dotted homes out here of the most incredible looking homes that were out here. It's all these places that were swirled around. And that's the kind of thing that these people at this period of history, they wanted to keep. They did not want their lifestyles damaged by separating from Great Britain. How were they going to get their lifestyle supported? And then the people of Queens resist on both sides. Now with Queens, I will mention to you that we had only 3 counties at that point. Today we have 4, Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk. The Queens County encompassed what is today's Nassau County. And when it got to a point with, if you will remember, and maybe you can just go back 2 slides so I can just look at that Long Island again. That here, today you'll see this is called Hempstead down here, and we get North Hempstead. North Hempstead was Patriot, it's always been Patriot. So South Hempstead here was South Hempstead and turned into Hempstead. they really divided the line during the war. And a lot of the areas down here, I will be showing you at the end some historic homes. One of them was definitely Loyalist at the time. Beautiful. Have any of you been, have you been more west on Long Island? Some of you, you know, and it's nice for me, maybe amusing, because when I ask people that are out here, and I'm doing talks either in Queens or Nassau County, I will be out just down here too in the fall as well. Have you been, I say, have you been out to the North Fork, the South Fork? And they don't, you know, so a lot of people don't know what's going on Long Island. But anyway, the beautiful old historic church in the book as well, because churches were very important in that period of history. Okay, we can go back to. And then anyway, Suffolk County harbors revolutionary. Suffolk County was mainly, as you folks know, was mainly patriot at that time. There were 3 smaller but very important battles out here in Suffolk County in this area as well. And then also a lot of the Culper Spy Ring. I'm sure you folks have heard that from Sartauket, right? That operated as a whole circular route, and Suffolk County was definitely part of that as well. Church and politics. Church and politics during the war was kind of interesting, because churches, unless a church was affiliated to what might have been British, such as the Episcopal Church, High and Low Episcopal Church, if they were Presbyterian, like in Huntington, beautiful old Presbyterian church, or some of the other ones, the British soldiers would rip out pews, because they were all wood at the time, for firewood. They would also use their churches for stables for the horses, right? Ride them through and everything. Really just incredible. So the politics of churches as well, people were on either side. Now the Quakers at that time, and there were quite a lot of them out in Nassau County, and still representations of them in Brooklyn as well. That the Quaker churches weren't, they were occupied by the British, but they weren't destroyed, because Quakers were more or less neutral at that time. You'll see that even all the way through some of the other wars in the 20th century. Spies, patriots, and saboteurs. Remember Nathan Hale? I would like to talk to you about him a little bit. Nathan Hale coming down here from Connecticut with a lot of patriots and saboteurs. There were strikes. You know, that, if you're familiar here, you folks would be out here in Suffolk County, the distance up to Connecticut, that there were strikes on the, out here. Matter of fact, I'll just mention to you, in the Southold area, the people had to flee. Once we lost that battle of Long Island, people would flee out to Southold and then up to Connecticut. And the thing is, there would be strikes, whaleboat raids, what they called them. Whaleboat raids were these 30-foot boats kind of end to end. And there would be patriots going up to, patriots coming down from Connecticut down here doing strikes on Loyalist homes and things, and the British. And then once the British caught sight of that, they started going up to Connecticut. But there was definitely a lot of sabotage going on at the time. Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. I just want to finish out those last couple of things here. Women slaves in the war. Again, women were very important to the people. Women were also camp followers. They followed the men into battles, into their encampments. They did sewing circles. They tended to wounds. They were morale. Martha Washington, when she went to visit, she's a brave woman. She went to visit George Washington's encampments, winter encampments. And you know, God help her if she ever got caught, or him, you know. You can imagine the kidnapping that would have gone on. Anyway, so she led sewing circles and things as well. And apparently at the end of the war, just a quick diversion from this, at George Washington's home in Mount Vernon, some of the men from the war wanted to go they went down to Mount Vernon, but they wanted to see her, because she was so instrumental in morale at the time. And then obviously there were slaves here on Long Island, not the amount that were in other parts of the 13 colonies. We did have them here. Now with the war over, evacuation. There is still a sign down in Manhattan. Manhattan was evacuated first, and then here on Long Island. Manhattan was evacuated November 25th, And then out here, Long Island, it was incremental, going from Nassau, Suffolk, and then finally out here as well. Some of the slaves that were still part of loyalist homes or something, they went with the British, and they would have gone down or either up to Canada, down to some of the Caribbean islands, back to Britain or whatnot as well. And then the evacuation that took place, this is when December 4th, that George Washington, if any of you have been to Manhattan to Franz's Tavern?
Yes.
Franz's Tavern? Yeah, ladies? Okay. George Washington said goodbye to his officers. Almost 8 years some of them had been with him. You can imagine how emotional that was for him as well. Okay. This is the other book from this period. I think of this more as a post-revolutionary book. George Washington comes out here when he gets inaugurated, 1790. The war ends in 1783. The Constitution gets put in 1787. He gets inaugurated 1789. This was a quick thing that happened. He did 3 tours in the 13 colonies. The first one was up in New England, 1789. Comes out here to Long Island, 1790. And historians feel that he was coming out here. He wanted to see not only what was going on out here with the geography, but also to thank the spies here, the spy ring and whatnot as well. I'll be looking at some of these with you at the very end, okay? And these are just some of the things. Again, he comes from Brooklyn. He will take the South Shore first, going into the Queens towns on the South Shore, going up to the South Shore in Suffolk County, really as far as what I would think today is Patchogue. And then he goes up to the North Shore. I think about when I look at that, it looks like Route 112, if you're familiar with that. Out here, Route 112, which goes up to Port Jeff and whatnot. That looks to me like the route that he took up the North Shore, and then back over down through Roslyn and all of those areas out there as well, Oyster Bay, Roslyn, and then goes back the same way that he left to come to Long Island. And then the last part of it, I just like to put some of the other founders that were here as well. In both books, I put documents. One of my gripes about education today, undergrad, maybe school education, undergrad, is that the students are not taught to read documents, right? They don't read. American documents are the best way to study American history. The Declaration of Independence is my all-time favorite. The prose that it's written in and what it says and what they suffered. What they suffered in there, they fixed in the Constitution, right? We still have a long ways to go. So anyway, these are the George Washington's diaries that I put in that. In the other one, I put, and I think I had here also his George Washington's inauguration address, which he did downtown Manhattan. Folks, if you ever get to Manhattan at all, make sure you do a tour, or even a walking tour yourself of Lower Manhattan. The Lower Manhattan area has some of the best history in the Revolution history down there. And obviously you'll pass the World Trade Center area, you should be able to see the Liberty Tower. I think I read that they're building another tower down there as well, which is amazing. Okay, and then as I said, I put the Declaration of Independence and a couple of the other ones in the other book. Okay. Now this is our George Washington in the French and Indian War. He is a man of about 26 years old at that point. By the time he finishes with his 8 years of being president, now he's at the end of the war, he's in his about circa 60 years old. He will pass on in his early 60s. So that's him as he looks now without all the white hair. Okay, now this, excuse me, I added this in because I want people to know what the pre-revolutionary period was. If you read historians from this revolutionary era, there will be some that say it was just an economic act. A couple of historians that feel that way, which it wasn't. Political, economic, what I call the American mind was already developed by that time. Because if you think about the length of water and the length of time it took for a ship, a sailing vessel, to get from the East Coast all the way to Britain. Or as John Adams had to do one time when he went there, when he was ambassador, he had to get off in Spain and overland to Belgium and all the other areas. But these are some of the acts, the really intense, impressive acts that happened during this period of history. Now, this starts with the Currency Act of 1764. There was another one earlier than this. But what the British did was put this Currency Act in prior to when the war started in 1775, because they did not want the Continentals, the colonists here, to use their own currency. They had to only use what the British were using at the time, which was going to restrict the trade that they had with other areas down in the Caribbean and whatnot. The Sugar Act. We go into restaurants today, whether you go into a diner and you see the little packets of white, brown, green, not green, but yellow and purple and all the rest of that. In their period of history, sugar was a commodity, it was an expense, and it was in the form of a cone. Like these cones you get out in the street, but it was more like this. And you had these, what I think are they're knippers or whatnot. You had somebody come over that you wanted to impress or whatnot with tea, you give them, they take the little snippets of this cone and put it in your tea. And it was wrapped, they had to be careful, obviously, mice and rats and everything like that. But the Sugar Act, now with the Sugar Act and some of the rest of these, the British would start adding in other things. Much like today when the Congress might pass a bill, they have what they call a rider to the bill. If you're familiar with a rider, that they attach other things onto it that the president might not want at all, but they attach it on because then they know the bill will get passed with that rider. They will do that with this. The Stamp Act was one of the most difficult that was put in place. Stamp Act caused tarring and feathering of officials and whatnot. When I passed through Cold Spring Harbor, and if you folks get a chance to go more towards Nassau and then going into Suffolk County, 25A is a wonderful route going from, let's say, Great Neck all the way out to Port Jeff. That with the Stamp Act, the British taxed anything that was paper, even playing cards, newspapers, documents. So there were certain industries, certain business and professions that suffered more than anyone else, like legal profession or the commerce profession. Remember, they weren't doing anything or printing out things, right? Everything was by handwritten things, right? And so that was a very difficult act, and all the protests, the Stamp Act protests that came about because of that. And as I said, the tarring and feathering of the customs collectors and things. So the British repealed that act as well. Now, the Quartering Act was also the same year. This is where colonists were forced to quarter and house British soldiers. Now, New York was very instrumental in refusing to do that, but only to their own detriment. So with that, and when I talk to students or whatnot about this, and I say, would your parents want to quarter 3 or 4 additional soldiers, mouths to feed, homes, beds, and all the rest of that? Most of them would probably say no, right? Now the thing is with that, so people didn't want to do that either. And as well, if they were protesting the British and did not want them even anywhere in the area. Now this Declaratory Act was a response to the Stamp Act. The British, with the repealing of that, said, okay, we're going to repeal the Stamp Act, but the Declaratory Act said that it is our right to put in any taxes against you that we want, or to do anything else. These were all, they may have been economic, they were all political acts as well. And then the Townsend, what they call the Townsend duties, the Townsend acts, a whole list of things that were taxed. Glass, those of you familiar, and I don't know whether, do you folks have 12 over 12 in this building? In some of the old historic homes and whatnot, they have 12 over 12 smaller windows. Also what they would have are, I only know 2 buildings that I've seen it in, they call them CAS, K-A-S, which is a big wardrobe. Mm-hmm. I've seen it in the John Bown House in Flushing, and also, and I don't know if it was in Rawson, in the, not in that Van Nostrand Striking's house, not on there, one other one. Anyway, these huge, huge wardrobes because the British would tax closets. You have an extra closet, that's a room. So we're gonna tax you for having an extra room. So the Townsend Acts and all kinds of other stuff you can read about that. The Tea Act you should be familiar with. The British wanted to save the tea company and who were going under. So the colonists were not allowed to buy any teas or anything except from this company. So what they did and what was going on Long Island, really a lot of it on the North Shore all over Long Island, because we have a lot of coasts in here, the craggy coasts and things up on the North Shore, Nassau and Suffolk and everything. They said no, they were smuggling, right? Smuggling all the teas and everything coming in here. They didn't want the tax. So with the Tea Act, the ships come in with the tea, and as you know, they believed that it was the Sons of Liberty. That would have been Hancock and Samuel Adams and whatnot. And by the way, every time I go into a supermarket and I see Samuel Adams beer, I have to say, "Hi, Samuel." Hopefully, I don't know if he sees me up there, but it's just like amazing. Okay. So the Tea Act, they threw the tea overboard, dressed as, I believe, the Mohawk Indians at that point. Okay, so the British and there were acts and reactions the whole way down. They had what were called the coercive. The colonies called them the intolerable acts. The British called them coercive acts, and they're even more of squeezing them. So what happened next? In 1774, the First Continental Congress was developed, and they met in Philadelphia at the I'm thinking about on Roslyn, I don't know why it escapes me, on the side road that was the Jolly Fisherman. Right down it, there's it's the same thing. It was a meeting house.
Constitution Hall?
Not Constitution, that's over there in that area as well, but it's a meeting house.
In Roslyn, there's a Carpenter's Hall.
Carpenter's Hall, thank you very much, Carpenter's Hall. In Philadelphia, there was a Carpenter's Hall. And the Carpenter's Hall is where the First Continental Congress met. And they had, not all of the states or the colonies were able to come. Unfortunately, it was burned down a few years ago, and they had to burn it, they had to rebuild and whatnot. Then what they did in this First Continental Congress is that they made a time and a date for the Second Continental Congress, which was May of 1775. But unfortunately, the war started a month earlier, okay? Anyway, so in the Continental Congress, there's so much we could talk about this with the committees of correspondence and everything. Okay, now with this again, I wanted you to see this, and this is a colorized map, historic colorized map. For one thing, Staten Island. Staten Island, for the Battle of Long Island, which was August 24th to 29th. Now, the 24th, the earlier parts of it were the gathering that the British had of all of their ships and their men and whatnot on Staten Island. And then the battle really was about the last 3 days, the 27th to the 29th. So here, the British gathered all of their ships, and then with that, there was about 34,000 men. And all you can imagine, all the ships and things. And the Battle of Long Island took place right about here, and I'll show you another image of that. And with that, as I say, the battle here, but you can see by that time, Nassau is going to already be fixed, and then Suffolk County all the way out there as well. So, and I want you to think about this, because I'm going to talk about this area of the East River. Okay, this was the old stone house. I took this for our 225th anniversary, and I loved walking behind this. You can see the smoke I told you in that painting. We civilians were allowed to walk behind all the militia, and they were firing at one another. The stone house, they've done a good job. They've refurbished it. It's now a small museum in that area.
Where is it?
In Brooklyn Heights. Down in that area. Okay. And this is another well-known graph painting of George Washington getting his men off of Long Island. We lost that Battle of Long Island in there. And Washington, he was a brilliant tactician. I don't care what any historian said. Had campfires burning so that the British thought that they were still there when they weren't. He got his men off of by those whale boats, 30-foot whale boats. John Glover, who is from Boston, John Glover and his baymen, they were very familiar with the waters and whatnot up there. They ferried all of Washington's men over to New York City, which you can't really see on this, I pointed that out, that all of those men will get off of Long Island under cover of darkness without the British knowing it, right? The thing is, there was also, if you've ever heard of the Maryland 400, the Maryland 400 were from Maryland, and they were men that came up, and under Lord Stirling, they fended off the British as well. And they said the 400, Maryland 400, but about 200, I think it was 236 of them were killed fending off the British. They were buried in a mass grave, and no one seems to know exactly where that grave is today. One of the last times I read about it, it was underneath the pavement of a gas station kind of area, and those people did not want to sell it to history or whatnot. They wanted, make sure they got their money off of it anyway. This is a very crucial time because once Washington and his men, the Continental Army and then the militia who will follow them, once they leave Long Island, we will be completely occupied by the end of August, beginning of September. Okay, and this is looking towards New York City from Long Island, the Battle of Long Island that took place here. Again, Washington getting his men off to New York City. There was a pamphlet I have now, I don't know if it's still in print, called Washington Stepped Here. I worked in Manhattan for quite a few years. And in that pamphlet, it said that Washington got his men off of Long Island. The pamphlet said that they landed on 30th, what we would think of today, 30th Street and 1st Avenue. I also read another place that said maybe they sent some of them down to the South Street Seaport area. Anyway, so that was there, and so I went over to that 30th Street and 1st Avenue years ago. There was a bench there, and I was just sitting there thinking about that, because when you study history, you have to use your historic imagination, right? Just think about what went on at the time, what people went through, and all that, okay? So I sat there and I'm wondering, all these people walking, must have been lunch hour or something, running back and forth. Probably had no idea of all this that was going on in that area. But you have to think about that, study history. Okay, this is before and after the Battle of Long Island. Obviously the before I showed you, and in my book, I think they did, I asked them to white out this part of it. It was called The Devil's Belt. I said, I don't think I want that on the front page of my book, so if you would take that out. But Long Island, and then after the war, I just want to show you, this is what we acquired. We had the original 13 colonies from New Hampshire and then down to Georgia. We will acquire Vermont as our 14th state, and then we won't get Florida or Maine until about the 1820s with different agreements that came up. We will acquire, and by the way, with the Revolutionary War, there were only 2 million people living on the coast here. In New York City today alone, there is 8 million people. So you can think about what it was like then. Anyway, so we will acquire all of this land. Will turn into Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and a couple of the Great Lakes states up here that we will acquire. And as we go along, obviously, once we get into the 1800s, we will acquire more and more land. Okay, and Manhattan at that time. Manhattan was, with the American Revolution, they had some interesting things going on as far as how they handled the war. One of these was because there were so many POWs that they captured, that the British captured of ours, that they didn't have enough space. And I'll talk to you about the prison ships. I want to make sure what our time is so I don't run over and give you folks too much. Okay, but anyway, there were different places that they would house the prisoners. One of them is called the Sugar House, which is right near, almost like within touching distance of City Hall today, right? And then there were other areas. The British prison ships off of Brooklyn that were at that point of history. The British would demask the ships, put prisoners in there. Most of the time people perished in there. Disease, starvation, all the horrible things. One of the signer's wives, Francis Lewis, his wife was in there for a while, but then she passed when she got out of there. And there was different things we could look at, the British prison ships, if you want to do any kind of reading with that as well. Absolutely fascinating what happened to it. And at this period of history, remember that Manhattan was at a very low point. And slaves were buried. There was an African burial ground up in, right up above City Hall today. That's where the slaves are buried. They weren't allowed to be buried in the city. World Trade Center in here. Also some other things that were very nice. So if you get a chance to have a look at what New York City was at the time. Okay, these are some of the historic homes that I wanted to mention to you. This is St. George Church in Hempstead. It's absolutely a beautiful church, just really beautiful. Sometimes in some of these old historic homes, the slaves were allowed to sit up in the balcony areas, right? But they're just beautifully preserved here. And really in the middle of Hempstead, which has its own hopeful renaissance going on. Okay, I want you to have a look at this. This is Huntington. Lots of wonderful cemeteries. I love going to old cemeteries here on Long Island. I remember my mother saying, don't walk on any of the graves. So, you have to be careful and respectful and all that. You can see some of these graves are going to be the oldest, the ones with the brownstone, which some of you can barely see anymore. In Port Washington, where we are, there's several old cemeteries as well. Some of them that they paved over, and they might have put all the headstones against the fence someplace. But the British, and this is only part of that cemetery. Today it's a Soldiers and Sailors Monument building. You walk up onto this. The British built a fort at the top of this cemetery. Just amazing. And what they did was the British soldiers used to knock over the headstones and bake bread on them, right? And the person's name who was on the headstone might be on the bottom of the bread, right? Very, very disrespectful, and even the pastor at the time, his last name was Prime, P-R-I-M-E, and one of the officers, it was just very happy that this pastor passed and stepping on his grave and everything. So anyway, so I walked up here one day. I wanted to see why they built the fort up here. I turned around and looked down at the harbor. You could see the whole vantage point of what was going on. Now, with the taverns on Long Island, and this I use this for both with Washington. Washington also dined here. Taverns were important during the American Revolution. They were the communication points. There were also, such as with Nathan Hale, where he would unfortunately get himself into trouble. Historians feel by relating what he was doing on Long Island. But you'll see a lot of these. The brown signs and the light blue signs are what, the brown signs and the light blue signs are the historic signs here on Long Island. Nathan Hale. Okay, I've been to this several times. In Huntington, on what is New York Avenue, coming down into what is called Hale Site. It's kind of a smaller area of Huntington. And Hale Site is where Nathan Hale was captured. Now, on this huge rock, on 4 sides of it, are plaques dedicated to Nathan Hale. I think on this one is I only have one life, and they put to lose. I see to remember, to give for my country, but it's after a playwright named Cato. Anyway, on all sides, all against that. And once you're driving down this road, and there's a turnaround, you're going to have to go around, but you'll see it off to the left. It is well worth stopping and looking at that as well with Nathan Hale. He was brought into New York City. He was captured here, brought into New York City, held at what was called the old jail, G-A-O-L. That's phonetic spelling. And then he was brought up to what is today 66th and 3rd Avenue. There were plaques, apparently they keep getting stolen, something or other. He was brought up there, he was hanged up there in front of, and remember they didn't have TV or internet or any of that, so a hanging was kind of a performance, if I could say that, or something to watch. So they had all the British soldiers and everything out there. He asked for a Bible, he asked for a minister, they declined both, and he was hanged up there, put in an unmarked grave, so they don't really know where that is either. One of our patriots. By the way, he was from Connecticut. Another one, some historic homes and whatnot. I just wanted you folks to know about these. You have to go out and see history, right? The old house in Brooklyn, that is one of the areas that, with the John Bound house. Do I have that down here? Yeah, anyway, and the Rufus King Manor in Jamaica. He was a signer of the Constitution, very well worth seeing in Queens as well, and buried not too far from there. Kingsland is in Flushing, that's their historic society, it's a small building there. Sands Willett House, I was a trustee in that house for 4 years in Port Washington. Wonderful place, they have 7 sons that participated in the American Revolution, either by fighting or by participating with giving funds, giving products, whatever it was to support the revolution. But I'm sorry, there's just so many stories we could talk about with this. This is Raynham Hall in Oyster Bay. If you've ever been to Raynham Hall is a combination of Revolutionary era and Victorian. They kept the old Victorian, it was added on like a lot of the homes. It was kept on there in the back. This is the front port. They took off a lot of the portico and everything. It's another wonderful museum to go to with the 2 front parlors being from the Revolutionary era. If you ever get to that, please do not go into any of those ghost tours that they have. Oh my God, even students have to get rid of it. It's wasted their time with that. Rock Hall in Lawrence, down in the South Shore area. That was a Loyalist home. Patriots took it over, and then the Loyalists kicked the Patriots out. The Arsenal in Huntington. I showed you that's a small red building. I love that building. It has, if you get a chance to go up there, climbing up these kind of stairs, you can hold one of the muskets from that era and how heavy they were. And I think about the men carrying those things through the Revolutionary War and marching and maybe not always being fed and carrying those muskets as well. Amazing. Sancta Coast Manor in Bayshore. Have any of you been there? Okay. Sancta Coast Manor, another wonderful, I think I have a picture of that. Also where George Washington stayed there. Another home that was built onto as well, like the Sands Willett House. Many homes would have something from an original era. They didn't tear it down. They would just keep bringing, maybe dismantling something and bringing it and sticking it on, right? Sands Willett House has really fascinating. The middle of the home is from an era that's later than what they put on over here. It's beautiful. Sancta Coast Manor is the same thing. William Floyd Estate, that's out in Suffolk County. William Floyd, one of the signers of the Declaration. His home was ruined during the American Revolution as well. British came there and all kinds of things. I've been out there. The National Park Service operates it. Wonderful job they do. He moved upstate New York after the war. St. George Manor. This is important to see. It's one of these sites of the war. I told you 3 main battles out here. The St. George Manor as well. I believe I have a picture of one of the soldiers drew of what that battle looked like in that area. And the old house in Cutchogue up on the North Shore, if any of you have been there. Huge, huge barn-looking building as well. And every time you go to one of these places, you get a chance to really feel and see history and know that, unless a hurricane comes on our island or whatnot, that these are going to be there well after, we've all passed from here. Okay, this is the Sancta Coast Manor, the original. I did a book signing there one time. The Sancta Coast Manor during the Revolutionary War, this is all grass out here. It was leading out to the water. British soldiers were encamped out here. What the British did when they occupied a home like they did with Raynham Hall, and this, they would allow the family to live up on the higher floors, and they would occupy down here. So the Judge Thompson was carrying a lantern, going up to the third floor, maybe going past a window. One of the British soldiers, young British soldiers, thought that he was signaling to someone out on the water. So he took a shot at him, and apparently the bullet is still in the stairs going up to that third floor. This is the Sands Willet House. You can barely see it, but over here is the original. There's a slop kitchen in there. It's more like what you think about salt box houses if you're familiar with the architecture from that period of history. And with this, this middle section is newer than the part that they added here. These folks have done such a wonderful job. There's a new president and curator for about the last 10 years, I think, or so. They've done a wonderful job. They have all kinds of exhibits in there. I learn a lot when I go there to their exhibits as well. They have another one going on right now about the American Revolution. Anyway, another great home to really see history. Bound House in Flushing. Bound was a Quaker in that area, and with the mid-1600s, like all over Long Island, we have areas from the 1600s, right? Some of the you go to Manhasset over by where we are, they have a big sign established 1630. You have a lot of those out here. In the South Fork here, obviously, there are places from the 1600s as well, because ships would come in and end here. And again, it's listed as the second oldest in New York City. I wanted to see a list of these things, so I think I have the next website on here. Not yet. Roslyn and Paper Mill, these are also, this looks very different now. They're finally getting to refurbish this. They're starting to refurbish it and hopefully leaving all some of the slats and things from that era. Washington made a paper mill. He supposedly made a paper when he came through Roslyn. Yes, I'm sure Jamie could talk to us about that. Have you been to Roslyn lately?
Not since.
I'm just saying that because this project of refurbishing this was started with Nassau County Tom Bullotta, who was our county exec years ago, and they're finally getting to this, and I'm hoping that they have some of these left that we can go up and touch some of the, the boards and things from that period of history. Okay, this is the website I just got. Wikipedia is not always accurate, but I did see this, I liked it. A lot of the oldest buildings in New York City area, and that would be, from the boroughs and all that as well, from that period of history. You'd be amazed all the history that is around that we can go see. I've been all over Long Island and 13 colonies and everything. It's just amazing. Okay. This is my motto that I put on all of my emails when I get emails at school, or even to I am on the board of the American Revolution Roundtable in New York City. I'm what's called the Speakers Coordinator. So I acquire the authors, American Revolution authors. I'm also DAR. Any other DAR members here? Daughters of the American Revolution. Those of us that have ancestors that we can trace back to the American Revolution. Even some of them that go back farther into colonial history as well. So this American history must be experienced. That to me is that I tell students, and even folks like you, history is just books unless you go out and see it, right? Read about it, which is great. Read about it after you go see something, look at some of the drawings and things, but you must experience American history to really get a feel of it. And these are our two at the end. George Washington, when he was president, Martha Washington as well. Again, I think about her going to visit all of his encampments when they were both younger during the Revolutionary War. And after at the end, when he was 8 years president, he will go home to Mount Vernon. He will survive about 2.5 years, and then he catches a cold from being out in the winter in the It snows down where you folks are too. Where in Virginia are you from?
Fairfax,
Yeah,
just
Fairfax.
west.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Listen to me.
It always snows every year at least once.
Yes, yes. And he was out on his horse surveying his farm and whatnot, quite cold. Anyway, and eventually got, well, I guess what we might think of also is strep throat, but one of the practices they used to do at the time, and I went to Mount Vernon one time when they allowed us up into the cupola area, first his bedroom, then the cupola. And they used to bleed either with leeches or with slitting things. Medicine at that time was quite amazing, but you know, to me, I have high regards for what he did. Remember what is said by Richard Henry Lee, first in war, because he was general in chief of all the forces, first in peace, which he was president, and then at the time, first in the hearts of our countrymen. So, thank you for coming, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope didn't keep you too late. You could still go home and have dinner or something as well. Any questions? Any comments? Anything? I guess I filled you with so
I
much.
was just gonna say, have you been to, in New York City, I'm trying to think that the house where Washington slept, it's north of
Yeah,
Hamilton Heights, and Burr
yeah.
and married somebody.
Are you talking about up in Westchester or in New York City?
In Manhattan. Manhattan, it's around 161st Street.
The Jumel
Yeah,
Mansion? Jumel Mansion?
Yeah.
The Jumel Mansion?
Yeah, I think that's
The thing
it.
is, that was part of the war. His actual home, I thought where you were going. He had two actual homes in Washington, in New York City when he was president. Just to divert from your question a minute, we had 1789, 1790, New York City was the first capital. 1790 to 1800 was Philadelphia, and then after that down in DC, the women hated going down to Washington DC because there was nothing there. It was all swamps and things.
Thanks so much, we have dinner plans.
Oh,
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank you. I thank you for coming. Anyway, but as far as where you're talking about, that was one of the sites, yes, when during that period of history when he was in the Revolutionary War.
Right.
He went to that, yes.
Yeah, because he was there, and then from there he went to New Jersey.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Fort Lee.
Fort Lee, yes, and Fort Lee as well. We could talk about all kinds of stuff with Alexander Hamilton also in that area going there. So any other comments, questions?
We have a gravesite of like British soldiers buried here in Sag Harbor.
In
Right by the whaling, the church, the Whalers Church, Old Mary's Church.
Where is that?
It's just like a hop, skip, and a jump.
On Union Street?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's wonderful because as I said, so many of these cemeteries, they'll say Revolutionary soldiers were buried here, and you know that we participated for the entirety, you know, of the